תכה, יש מישהו חוץ מאמא שבא לך בשם המשחקים שלך? סיימנו ממש. Не игровой, да? Нет. Ну, дура, да.
Thanks very much for your time. So two wins out of 6 so far in the lower four.
The other one is these guys are number one spectator sport.
Good luck. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's on the same list that will be quite dark by the end of that is when I meant that there is the problems, I didn't mean the light thing is problem, that's turning it on to be really very sometimes they take half an hour to do that. The thing is, they could probably play the game as long as it's dark by the end. I don't think it's a problem to get the light at all.
Welcome back to coverage of the European Youth Ultimate Championships 2019 edition. We are live here all week from the Olympic Stadium in beautiful Wroclaw, Poland, bringing you action from the Under-20 Open Division. A lower pool matchup between Israel and Russia. I am Benjamin Rees, joined by the one and only my esteemed colleague, Mr. Felix Shardlow.
Good afternoon, Benji. So what do we know about these teams?
So it's not necessarily been a dream tournament so far for these teams. Both of these sides were unsuccessful in winning any of their initial pool games, so finished bottom of their pools, so they've gone into the lower pools. Israel had a very tough group. They lost to Germany 15-7, went down 14-11 to Denmark and 15-6 to Sweden, but since then they've rebounded in this lower pool, taking down Slovakia 12-9 and Austria 15-6. Again, the Russians winless in the pool stage. They lost to GB 15-8. France 15-3 and had a heartbreaker going down in Universe to Switzerland. Mixed fortunes in this lower pool for them. They beat Austria 15-12 but suffered a 14-12 defeat at the hands of Slovakia, and they'll be looking to bounce back from that loss this morning here with a win over their Israeli counterparts, and Russia will begin the game offensively, and there's going to be a pick. Reznik left suspiciously open.
Yeah, it's an immediate pick coming out of a tight stack offense. Defender setting up on one side and then being impeded from following the offensive player. Equals pick.
So players get their positions reset. Russia operating out of the vertical stack look, set up in the middle of the field. Key looks around for an option, and a big layout D comes through from Tal Osri. What a fantastic play, just exploded out. Trying to set a standard for his teammates early on here. What a play.
Yeah, it's incredible. He anticipated the pass, took off early, flew through the air, knocked it down.
So Weinstock picks up. Swings into the middle of the pitch. There's an underneath cut that comes. Perlis looks now to Weinstock. He's got the disc right on the precipice of the end zone. Tough position though, and everyone clouds forward towards the front of the end zone. Nice vision there, opening the blade to the back corner. A big bookend for Tal Osri on this first point of the game. The Israelis break for 1-0.
Yeah, it was a very nice pass around the edges that just had enough angle on it to swing it around the defenders and the other players in the way. Not too much so that it's a difficult one to catch. So pretty solid score there from Israel after getting a D on what, the second pass, was it, the Russian offense?
It's just such a fantastic block. Comes from the backside, does a very good job as well, not just only taking that inside line, but doesn't make any contact with the player as well. That's exactly what you want to see. A player throwing themselves around, but very cognizant of his opposition as well, and using the full depth of the end zone on that score. The player drew both defenders to the front of the end zone, and then utilising that roll curve, getting it around that front line of defence, finding an open Osri in the back of the end zone for the Israeli break to start this game. We see Israel wearing their now traditional bleach blonde and blue haircuts that we see them rock at every tournament. Makes them a pretty easy team to spot when they're out and about here in Wrocław.
Can make them difficult to distinguish from each other at a glance though. I initially thought, oh, that's the guy with the blonde hair and the blue streak, and then I looked around a bit more and was like, oh, hang on a minute. It's quite a few of them.
I mean, it's certainly a look, but it's nice having these national teams have their sorts of traditions, their little haircuts. I can't imagine being on a team that would have a traditional nationals haircut, for example, Felix.
The Mohawks, of course. What kind of Mexican hairstyle might they have?
No idea, Felix. No idea. Bernikov puts it deep, trying to find a target right at the back of the end zone, but it's going to be too far for Reznik.
Ambitious big shot. Israel showing that they have those big throws.
And I don't necessarily mind the idea of looking for that big option there from Bernikov. Sometimes it's good to get those deep throws in motion early, even if they don't necessarily come off, because it lets the other team know that you're going to execute them, and it gives the defenders a little something extra to think about, although on that occasion maybe not the best decision.
Yeah, now Russia have put a disc up deep, then Israel know they have to respect it in future and maybe cover the deep cuts, knowing that, yeah, those throws could come, even if they have to be bladey. Russia are willing to take on anything.
So getting the disc changed out as it rolled out the back onto the speedway track. Just got scuffed and car parked up a little bit. Sun now beating down here in Wrocław. Big gainer underneath, creating huge separation. No immediate continuation though, doing the right thing. taking the resets at Osri. Nice expansive deep cuts. They're doing a lot of movement, and player on the force takes a little bit of a clatter and falls to the ground. Alexei Zubets.
Just got his foot trodden on. I think he thought it was quite bad to begin with and then realised that maybe it was just a glancing blow.
Yeah, one of those things where that initial twinge of pain can be a little bit sharp, and then after a while it subsides pretty quickly as Osri gets the disc in that underneath position. Looking around, good body positioning there, getting the disc up line is Langer, and he's going to put it deep, but this throw is going to hang, and two Russian defenders get underneath it. In the end, Andrei Key swats it away with the left hand.
Andrei got up high to get that one, just swiped his hand at the right point to catch the underside of the rim, fling it out the side.
So Russia have the disc on the far sideline. We'll see if they can do a little bit better on this second possession of the point. Swing goes to Komarov.
This is a transition into horizontal or vertical. Maybe it's just nice vertical.
Taking a little bit of a big landing there. Barnyakov once more winds up the arm to open deep. That time well tracked by the receiver, the number 10 shirt, Alexei Alexeyev. But he's looking around, not seeing anyone else. Low release, gets it just underneath the mark, punching it in. Russia wasn't particularly clean, but eventually getting the hold through the hands of Alexei Zubets, and now tied back up at once.
And we've seen a couple of kind of slow floated discs go up without a huge amount of distance on them, with their players kind of running down, reaching out, laying out for them. Instead, they've been a little bit floatier, so at the moment it's coming down to who can get the best read on the disc, and then get the sky if they need to.
So tied back up at one apiece here in this game. Just going to see a bit on the replay. There's the contact that caused Zubets to fall to the floor. The swing from Komarov goes into the middle. Big layout bid. Gets a piece of it, but not enough. It goes back into the hands of Baronyakov. He put it deep, found his intended target of Alexeyev, and he continues in the end to Zubets for the goal, and we're now tied back up 1-1 early on in this game.
Yeah, he was unlucky not to get that D, actually. Again, he took off super early, jumped really high, did pretty much enough to get it, but there was the luck didn't fall his way, and there was backup underneath it.
So you're just seeing some of the flags in the far sideline fluttering a little bit. Not a huge amount of wind here, but enough to make you really have to make sure you're executing these throws properly. If you're not putting the requisite amount of torque on them, they're just going to fall to ground and flutter a little bit.
It's not clearly blowing in one particular direction. Maybe a bit swirly this wind. Low releases definitely help with every throw.
It's one of those things you do see quite a lot in stadium settings where the wind gets trapped and just forms these little pockets that swirl around, and just sneaking that one past the defender. As he tried to peel off, he just got a little bit of contact there. Nice slap of hands.
Yeah, unfortunately, flow being stopped. This is one of those situations where the contact was, accidental, of course. And if maybe he had just shrugged it off and played on, then they would have been able to continue their flow.
And the rules now have the contact marking infraction where the stall instantly resets to 0, but that time just choosing instead to take a little bit of a breather, squeezing that one now into a tight window, finding it underneath. Cechik can't make the connection. Receiver Osri slaps his chest, knows that he should have caught that one. Russia can bring us back on serve with a break. Weinstock tried to get it all the way around to get the disc out of the hands, but making contact a little bit early. Dubinin will have the disc in his hands. Weinstock wearing that distinctive red bucket hat on the mark. Certainly makes him easy to pick out. He's probably got a similar haircut as well, but you don't need to see under that very fetching hat. Underneath cut again, the Israelis throwing themselves about with reckless abandon, not getting the disc on this occasion though is Itai Cechik, and the swing goes into the center. Inside flick finds Alexander Basov. Fakes the first dump, takes the second off to Adelin. See him motioning and gesturing where he wants his players downfield to move. Takes the dump to the open side. There's no continuation. Everyone clears through, and there's no reset at the moment, and a pick is called, which is going to bring a temporary stoppage to proceedings.
Russia struggling to advance the disc very far. past this tight 1-to-1 Israeli defense.
I wonder as well, the fact that they've seen the Israelis put these big bids in early means that they're reticent to say some of these slightly dicey passes because they know that the Israelis are going to put them in a strong effort to try and get it. Underneath is Adlin. Russia just grinding things down the field, but they are maintaining possession at the moment. Reset how it goes, but it's completely not looked at.
Second time in a row.
Now, with a disc trapped on the far side, Asahov hammers into the centre over the first receiver. The second lays out, but couldn't quite get it into his grasp. The 11 shot of Alexander Yambulatov.
That's so unfortunate. The first offensive player bounced out of his hands. He reached up to get it. Second one would have got it with the layout had it not been touched.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more communication there. If he'd called Basov away, asked him to leave it, then it might have ended up in Yambulatov's hands. So Israel working the disc in the backfield at the moment. Have it on this sideline.
Much happier to take the backwards pass, possibly because that's just the style that they know they need to play against a zone.
Yeah, field position not quite as crucial when you know that they're going to constantly have options to move straight away from those. Cut goes up line, just about squeezes it in, goes behind Kedem and in front of Osri, and a little bobble, but stays in the hands of Adel. The wind, again, you can see, causing a little bit of problem with some of these throws and catches. Weinstock getting close on the mark and a little bit too close on that occasion.
So the Russian zone generated the turnover. Israel looked good when they were flowing down the field, but the Russians clamped down, stopped the flow, and got a turn on the next pass.
Weinstock checks it in. Adlin shows the hammer and goes towards the far sideline instead for Yambulatov. Arguably could have had a goal already at this point. Weinstock bids, can't get there. Now Adlin is going to lash a blade deep and well smothered out of the sky by Tal Osri.
A little bit too much float on that throw, and the Israelis showing how good they are reading the disc and getting up high to bring it down.
Has it, and he swings into Weinstock. Now just pinballing the disc around the back a little bit. Osri. Looking back to Weinstock. Again, they feel very calm and relatively unflustered when they've got the disc. They just need to make sure they can work this all the way down. Nice little lead pass into space. They've really spread out the defenders downfield. Kempfer finds Kedem in the backfield. Another Fateha. Disc goes into the center again, looking very calm, very cool, very collected. Fateha finds an option, not quite in the end zone just yet, and Chechik looking around, doesn't really like what he sees. Cutter goes up line, defender's not looking at it, but just in and out of the hands of Fateha. Maybe he thought he already had it.
I was about to say, I can't believe that Israel are in the lower divisions, in lower part of the group in this game, because their techniques are so sound. You know, they're throwing lefties, righties, running after the disc. Everything looks very, very solid, and then maybe they've just been very, very unlucky, as they were with that end zone cut.
They did say that when they played that group game against Denmark, they were actually up a bit at half. They had a strong start to the second half, but in the end, Denmark just found an extra gear that they couldn't answer. Against Germany and Sweden, they were just a little bit outmatched, maybe. They felt that possibly that Denmark game was one where if they played it again, maybe later on in the tournament, they could have played it definitely a bit closer. But the way this format works, you finish bottom of the pool, immediately locked out of championship contention. The best either of these teams can play for is 9th. Regardless of where you finish in this lower pool, you will then go straight into a lower 8 bracket. You face one of the two bottom place finishes from the 2 top power pools. So obviously, the better you finish in the lower power pool, theoretically the easier game you're going to have when you reach the bracket stage.
I believe there was a travel call a moment ago. Just one of the Russian players catching and throwing on the move, but not slowing down fast enough with the disc in their hands.
Adlin has the disc right on his own end zone line. Fakes the flick, doesn't like it. Quickly looks away the reset. Dubinin comes underneath. Beautiful lead throw into the hands of Adlin. With the power position, the cuts don't quite develop early enough. Big hammer goes over the top. Good communication that time. Very clear that Sviridov was going to be the player who reeled it in. But there's nothing going off that big gainer. Looking around, everything gets very congested. And there's going to be a brief stoppage here, potential stall out. It felt like the disc was in the hands of Daniil Sviridov for quite a while.
Yeah, it did feel like a long time, and didn't really turn around to engage his reset at any point. He stayed facing the end zone for the majority of the stall count, maybe glancing over his shoulder.
One of the risks there, obviously you want to be aggressive and you want to score, but especially if you're the furthest player downfield, maybe you see if that cut does develop, and if it's not there, I want to turn around a little bit more to try and activate more potential options for myself.
And credit where credit's due, Israel's tight one-to-one defense in the end zone. You'd expect when you're facing the end zone that close that someone's going to be free either on the open side or get some separation on the break side, but there was none of that.
So we're just seeing the players involved in discussion here. Zubets, who speaks very good English, coming on to help aid translation for his teammates. He was kind enough to come and chat with us beforehand, make sure that we had our pronunciations nailed down, giving us a little bit of extra info as well, which was greatly appreciated.
He's got a couple of players free behind. He's got 2 seconds to throw it. He did not throw it. And what's the rules in this situation? Because it feels like that should be a turnover because he still has it in his hands.
So I think he's maybe saying that, again, there's a potential violation. Maybe that's a fast count, so he's, again, within his rights to talk about this, so you're not leaving that full second in between.
But in that situation, is there not a rule that says something about the person still has the disc in their hands? Then it means that if it wasn't a fast count, then they would probably still have it in their hands anyway, you know, if it's a difference of a quarter of a second.
Potentially, but obviously if the count is fast, it tends to go 9-10, and then as soon as that tier 10, the stall out technically happens, so you don't necessarily have the time to call the fast count perhaps, but they are agreeing on this occasion that the stall out is justified and valid. But the Poe throw immediately pops up. Good back up there from the 22 shirt, Alan Fataha. A little bit of a bump, but both sides happy to just
another one you could just shrug off and play through to maintain the flow on offense, potentially. But maybe he could have been hurt from it.
Cechik. One's on this little inside channel there. Fakes the around, now goes back to Osri, looking for a dish off. Players flood through from the downfield. The reset goes instead to Kedem. Now Weinstock finds Fataha. Back to Weinstock. Again, it feels weird that Israel have had so many turns against this zone because they generally seem to be so cool and calm against it.
Yeah, they all look solid. Catches and throws. Nothing looks to be sketchy per se. Haven't seen many overheads from them, and they are having to take a lot of passes.
So there's a swing that goes, continuation, Weinstock, oh, the throw's going to pop up off his hand, and that's why you need to have that field awareness to make sure that if anything like that does happen, as it is liable to do when there's a little bit of wind, you're right there, and Johnny on the spot that time, Uri Kedem making the catch. Israel eventually hold on their first 0 point of the game. They're 2-1 up.
Yeah, a little bit of bad luck earlier on in the point in that end zone. Cancelled out then by Russia being in the right place, or Israel being in the right place at the right time, just as that disc pops over the head of the receiver. Then the chips fell in Israel's favour in that instance. I'm excited to see this rest of this game because interesting for Russia, do they play that zone again? I mean, they essentially generated, what, 2-3 turnovers with it. That last one, you know, as a coach, I would kind of chalk that up to being like a turnover pretty much, you know. It was like, that was 50-50 in the end. But Israel looks so competent with the disc in their hands.
It's really strange in that it doesn't seem to necessarily be causing too much pressure, but it is generating turnovers. As a coach, you have to weigh up how much of this is us generating turns, how much of this is Israel just turning themselves over a little bit, and maybe it's worth just throwing something slightly different at them just so they can keep them on their heels a little bit, put that extra second of process time in their head, making the catch with one hand underneath Ivan Reznik. Looks downfield. Nice gainer there, creating a bit of separation. A man who likes to put it deep, Filip Burnyakov. And as I say it, he does shoot that blade deep. brilliantly read. This is one of the things, it's a slightly unorthodox shot, but when you're expecting it, you know where it needs to be, and Alexei Zubets catches his second goal of the game, and we're tied back up at 2s. A nice, clean, offensive possession that for Russia.
Yeah, so supporter there for Israel. I think the throw went up just when he wasn't looking at the disc. His shoulders were facing in the direction where he couldn't actually see it then, so he had no real chance of finding that disc, which can be showing of a great thrower, because they choose the moment when the defender can't see them release it. They choose the angle, which will take them the longest time to find it, and at the same time they put the disc in a place where their receiver can catch it. So you see he's just unable to get an angle to get a bid on that disc. That's almost an indoor style throw, that blade with a high degree of verticality on it. And we talk a lot about, oh, you need to really make sure you have the fundamentals down. But I think it is important as a thrower to have those slightly more creative looks in your arsenal. And generally, especially with beginners, you say make sure you get your forehand and backhand down first, really nail them. But I think part of the reason why we play on it is because people just really enjoy playing. People just really enjoy throwing a disc. And when you've got some throw-rounds, obviously it's good to have sometimes just those really intense focus throws, but sometimes just enjoying yourself, trying things a little bit more different can mean that in a game you might find yourself in a little bit of a jam and you see a space, and because you've practiced those strange throws, you can hit those spaces, but that time trying to squeeze that into the teeth of the cup, but Basov is wise to it. Yeah, no questions about whether Russia forced that turnover with pressure or not. That was definitely a plus for the Russian defense. And you see Adlin using those backhands to the foreside so he can get that pickup, and he's on the move as he's throwing that disc, sliding to the ground now, Adlin, retaining possession. Lead throw is going to be a little bit too late, but somehow Yura Dibinin gets the disc. I thought the Israeli defender was definitely going to get the block, but look at the speed of those hands getting it in there and quickly withdrawing it as well. So the Israelis didn't get it. Russia break back. We're now on serve for the first time in this game at 3-2 to Russia. Just squeezing the disc up the sideline there. Barely any space for it. Disc goes up right down the line. You see the Israeli defender coming across, but the Israeli defender did incredibly well to avoid contact here, because this is one of the most dangerous points on the field and the most dangerous throws, which, if there is contact, can have a very bad outcome for both players. You see here, he jumps early and in front of the Russian player, and that's the only place where he can put a bid in which doesn't contact the receiver. So props all round. Just, yeah, good ultimate. Sometimes you just have to hold your hand up and say, yeah, fair cop, you got us on that one. Probably the thrower was biting their fist as he released it, seeing that defender appear out the stack. Back your receiver, Felix, back your receiver. So the man who threw that assist, Alexei Adlin, is going to pull here. For Russia, is going for a big black backhand blade. Excuse me. Easy for me to say. Israel field it just behind the brick mark. Take a swing to start things off. More zone here from the Russians. There are swings available, and the Israelis are more than happy to take them, which is what they should be doing, finding these open spots and utilizing them. Beautiful dumb cut from Teheha, but he doesn't get it on that occasion. Instead, gets it the second pass, now coming underneath the Sporter. Dishes it off to Weinstock. Teheha clears through. Chetik has it in the backfield. He's looking at his options. Takes the swing to Weinstock. Always seems to be open towards that far sideline. Staged right of the field. Here's Kedem. It's a looser defense from Russia, but they're doing very well to not lose track of all the Israeli players. And just as I say that, they find one free and tightly in the middle. Sometimes we see teams struggle against the zones when they get to the red zone as the spaces are at a premium, but the quick release, getting it out in front into the hands of Itai Chechik, and nice clean hold there for Israel. After a slightly slow start to this game, both teams picked up the pace a little bit now, knotted up at threes. When the disc is on the move, Israel do not seem flustered. They may have the occasional one that gets picked up by the wind, but they have the athletes to bring them down. But if Russia don't stifle the movement of Israel, then I could see them running away from this game. I think this is something that they could potentially do all day. Yeah, they don't look flustered, they don't look like they're pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone. Russia have got to clamp down in a different way, at least for a little while in this game, in order to see what else Israel have got. So tied up at threes.
in this game. Israel broke on the first point in the game. We had a couple of holds traded out. Russia got a break to go back in front at 3-2, and now Israel scoring to make the score like 3 apiece. Pull goes up from Israel. It's going to draw out of this near sideline.
So Russia started the first point with the vertical stack, and we saw that there was a layout D on the second pass. And since then, they've been doing horizontal, so that was an immediate adjustment. But, you know, it's not like the vertical was tested that much, so it'll be interesting to see how the game develops.
Do you think part of this is they've seen Israel come out in a zone for a couple of points, so know that actually there's no point having all of those players in that same space in the middle. We need to occupy these defenders, get them making decisions, and make them get a job, so to speak.
That's almost certainly it.
Russia looking very calm themselves, swinging around the back. That one's a little bit off target, but goes to the ground to keep it alive. Does Bernyakov, and now Israel coming down. Do you think this is partly because they've seen the Russians put it deep, so they're sitting that defender already in that space?
Yeah, I think they have a couple of athletes who have big ups as well, so keeping them towards the back, knowing that if the disc goes up like this, could be able to get underneath it.
And this man is having himself a game. All 3 of Russia's offensive points have gone into the hands of Alexei Zubets. It was good pressure behind him from the Israeli defender, but Zubets went up early, went up strong, boxed and bodied out his defender, the 21 shirt of Tal Austrian. Russia with a clean hold for 4-3.
Yeah, very different approach to breaking the zone. Russia, as soon as they have that shot to the end zone, 60-40 shot, then they put it up, they back their receiver. You can see the defender was close enough to get a really good bid in, but not able to get the position needed at the very end.
Just squeezing that sidearm down that far sideline. Once more, Bernyakov, who seems to be the main haka, getting the disc underneath and then looking downfield when players already spaced out a little bit more, getting a little bit of contact, but good to see him pick his opponent up. All very well spirited so far, which is what you want to see.
Yeah, there's clearly mutual respect between the players on the field, as it should be.
Certainly when these two teams have made this work, as you said, it's a little hard to believe that they are very much at the bottom end of this tournament, but I think this just goes to show that the depth and quality across the junior divisions in Europe has improved so much over recent years. So running some give-go to advance the disc down the pitch here, the Israelis. Now they're going to look deep. They're trying to find Chechik. A couple of defenders going to converge on it. The disc hangs for ages, but a fantastic snag from Chechik. There is a foul call, however. The defender, number 57, Mikhail Asakhov.
Now this was a really tricky one because that disc got picked up by the wind at the end and turned inside out. So the positioning completely changed.
And actually, in the end, looks like the foul call is potentially going to be retracted, although actually just waving the players back off the field. And they're signalling there that the goal does hand. So I always think this is the right thing to do. If you're in this situation, there's a bit of contact, I always feel it's better to call the foul, have the discussion, and then retract it if need be, rather than just kind of let that little bit of resentment bubble under the surface.
Yes, definitely. I think there's plenty of benefit to discussions on the field where one player may think that they're actually in the wrong and they're waiting to see the thoughts of the other player before saying, oh yes, I thought that might be what happened, so I'll retract my call. Sometimes some time is needed for those discussions to really figure out what happened. As we see this one again, you see the Russian player moves around to get a position, but there's some contact and everything before the jump, and I think it was decided it was 50-50. So each player kind of giving back as good as they got and nothing actually getting too physical.
You do tend to get that often when there's these deep shots that hang in the end zone, when there's a little bit of jockeying and jostling for position underneath, and in the end, Chechik gets a good read, goes up over the defender Astakhov, and now we're tied back up at 4-4. So the pull goes up from Osri for Israel. We'll see what Russia's O-line can do on this possession. So looking around, everyone else is set so far downfield for Russia, they have to work it exclusively between the handlers, and the disc towards the far sideline goes out of bounds, looking for Komarov. the spacing there was a little bit off. They were so far downfield that there was just no synergy, no connection between the handlers and the cutters.
Yeah, you could see Mike Palmer on camera 1 there had to zoom out significantly, and there's just a huge gulf between the handlers and the cutters.
So Israel can break here. They get back in front at 5-4 if they could punch this in. And taking the opportunity here to call the timeout right in front of the end zone, give themselves an end zone play that they really particularly like. I imagine they'll get some sort of ISO at the front of the end zone here, Felix.
I imagine they will turn over on the first pass. And this is going to be a turnout. I've seen so many this week, and that's it's the only thing that I can expect at the moment. Timeout is called. The defenders can set around the offense. The offense don't start with any kind of flow, and it becomes very difficult to get that first option. Normally the options are quite limited because there's been a discussion of a set play, and if the defense happen to stop those options, 1 or 2 options that are discussed after the set play, then they have very limited time to be able to complete a pass. So that's where my money is.
You need to have that internal clock, knowing when to look away from whatever you draw up. We're seeing again a replay of that previous score there from Itai Chechik, and then everyone sets downfield, looking for that reset, goes out of bounds. He doesn't make the catch, but he turns and looks, and he knows that he's already there. The defender, Perez, doesn't really even have to call it, and eventually Langer calling the timeout here. As you mentioned, yeah, it can be very difficult to get the offense in motion because obviously you can't move before the disc is checked in. So often, again, the stall count already at 2 or 3 before someone begins to get free. Often, I think a good look is actually, rather than look downfield, just get a reset so you can get the disc in motion and then look at what your downfield isolation play is going to be.
Yeah, keeping options open is almost always a good thing. You saw in there on the offense there when there was the gulf in the middle of the field, very limited options. You know, only the 2 handlers, providing the cutters were, you know, prevented from getting into that large space. After the timeout, I agree. If you look at the reset, then that's like a fairly good option. You know, fairly likely to get a free option. Running that set play, limited options, and if those options get nullified, then you can find yourself struggling. Russia have left the reset open here, so we'll see whether that's taken immediately.
Yeah, clearly either they're trying to bait that throw to go, or they're a little bit worried about that player working their way free in the isolation. They look to it immediately. There's a player wide open in the post, and eventually they do find Chechik. I would have looked for that, called for that instantly. Now the reset goes. Langer does punch it in, finds Tal Osri. Israel get another break. They're now back in front in this game. They lead 5-4 over Russia.
Yeah, again, just a couple of passes, very quick movement. That was an inside flick, lead pass, I believe. Not very lead pass because it's quite a direct one. Look at the celebration we've got going on.
I love that little conga line almost going on from the Israeli. I think it's one of their, I think their under-17 open team there. Again, Chechik looks downfield, doesn't like what he sees, squares up his hips, finds the reset, and then Osri makes that cut. There's a player behind him as well, but Osri had enough separation to get the disc through on that narrow inside lane. And as we said there, that's if you're gonna poach that isolation, I'd rather have it be maybe a player from the back where it's a little less easy to hit that poach, rather than having that player poach off the handler, because it means they've got a free, easy reset, and you don't. I wouldn't necessarily be particularly happy about having that release valve quite so open.
No, it looked like a last-second decision just before the disc was checked in, poaching off that. Definitely leaving an option at the back of the end zone is one that's far less likely to be seen, far less likely to be thrown to, than having the guy right next to the disc being free. And
if it is seen again, it's a lot more difficult to try and get the disc to the back of the end zone, past all the potential traffic in front. So Russia's O-line coming back on the field after being broken on the last point. The throw's a little bit behind Filip Bernyakov. He can't bring it in. Now Perils dishes it back. A little bit of a floaty, fluttery throw even. Didn't quite come out of the hands probably, but as long as it's completed, it doesn't quite matter, Felix.
He's choosing an interesting axis of spin for that one.
I mean, you don't need to have a certain amount of spin on it. It's not in the rules, so as long as it leaves your hand, it's all fine. Now they have an option on the far side of the field. They turn, look into the center, getting free in a very narrow space. Squirrely handler cut from Kedem. As this got the line a little bit, little nice leading pass, going to get this back in his hands. Osri collecting a beautiful pass there. Just fantastic use of those little inside-out lanes from the Israelis, and KDM finds Osri, those two running it between themselves on the far sideline, and they get another break here, opening up their advantage to 2 points for the first time all game, 6-4.
Yeah, I believe that Israel came out with one-to-one defense then, and that athleticism does seem to be very high because they were able to shut down a lot of the cuts that Russia were bringing. And I'm seeing frustration from the Russian team right now. You know, they're trying to get their chance going, but the people trying to lead their chance can't be heard because of the support the Israeli has. So they've called a timeout.
I think this is pretty understandable here. The first half is slipping away from the Russians a little bit, so here's a good chance to arrest the momentum slightly somewhat.
Who do you think is going to win?
The way it's going so far, and based on previous results in the group, the Israelis would probably have to be the favourites, but obviously we've seen that Russia have had some really nice passages of play, so certainly if they were to mount a fight back here and make this game closer, I would not be massively surprised. Again, you say probably based on the way this game's gone so far and based on the fact that they're undefeated in this lower pool, Israel very much the favourites, but you can't afford to put your foot off the gas because none of these teams are particularly any slouches.
I think it'd be interesting to see Russia come up, try maybe something they haven't done on defense before. I don't know exactly the sets that they have for their D, but they clearly realise the athleticism is a tricky one to get one ahead of Israel on. So switching out of man into zone, or maybe even they'd done some research before, choose to come down with zone, but now you can see Israel are able to pass the disc around with ease, so potentially they'll try something where try and match up tighter to some of the players and looser to others or different areas of the field, kind of thinking outside the box to force Israel out of their comfort zone.
See Israel getting very loud and rowdy there during that timeout, and that I would say is not out of character. We are staying at the same dorms as the Israelis, and they've been making their presence felt, having fun in the evenings. They're all staying together and they're all hanging out together in their off time as well, which is really good to see these teams forming a bond, not just with each other but with their other teams here this week. It's great to see that team spirit in play, both on and off the pitch.
Yeah, but now we have the Russian, I think, under-20 women's team have realised that noise is a big part of this game. So they've stepped up and they've started chanting now.
Certainly I think at the junior levels, the emotion tends to play a bigger factor than it does when you go slightly further up the age brackets. Teams tend to ride the highs and lows a little bit more, so bringing that energy, trying to power up their Russian counterparts. Hopefully coax out a little bit of extra performance, but the ball is misfielded. Key lets it roll into his own end zone. Perez puts the mark on. Big deep shot goes up. Weinstock has position, forces Zubets to go up a little bit earlier than he wanted, and I think Zubets is saying that there was contact on his foot as he tried to go up, so he couldn't quite spring off the turf as he would have wanted.
It's one of those fouls, very difficult to see. I can see what he's talking about. I think there is contact between the legs. If nothing else, that's going to put you off the catch. You know, you don't practice jumping up with contact on your legs. So
it feels like he's going to go up a little, like not just on the second jump, but he's preparing himself for a first jump, and that's potentially blocked.
We've seen how high he can get up, so it's understandable that if he says, you know, oh, I was going to jump for it once, got contacted, then I went for the second one, more contact happened. He had position. Well, if you just look at the arms, it looks like the Israeli defender did really, really well to get up there. However, I have time to listen to arguments about lower body contact, disrupting your beard and stopping the catch from being complete as it normally would be.
It doesn't necessarily stand out as immediately as some other potential fouls do, but if it does affect the player at all, then you are within your rights to call it. So they're going to contest the foul. In the end, is it relatively close? Either way, you can certainly see the points of view from both sides, so they're just going to send it back in the end to the initial thrower. Andre Guy has it.
I think we've got the Netherlands in the stands cheering. I believe they're cheering on Israel.
Generally, I find the neutrals tend to want close games, and that throw's going to spiral out the wrong way a little bit at the end. That time, Zivets had nothing he could do, so a break here would bring Israel within 1 point of the half-time. And Weinstock will pick up here for the men in blue, and he's going to swing to Lange. Finds an option underneath. Continuation goes to Peretz. He wants the dish back towards one of his handlers. No one's finding it, and eventually coming through all that little flick under such a tight window is very difficult to get off. That's why you tend to see players go for the lefty backhand there, but it does work out. There's going to be a travel call. It'll be Lange perhaps getting too much of a foot drag.
Great one-to-one defense by the Russians.
Certainly piling the pressure onto their Israeli opponents. Finding the disc underneath now is Osri. Takes the reset. Nice continuation going all the way towards the break side, but they can't get any yards off those swings. Once it comes underneath, sliding to the ground, securing the disc in his grasp is Hunter. Hunter looking around. Handler clears up line. He's going to put it out into space. Defender bids but can't quite get there. Unfortunate for Alexei Zubets, and Weinstock makes the catch. Israel just 1 point away from half now at 7-4.
Zubets with a great bid. You can see him throwing all of his weight at the disc and landing, crumpling on the floor. There was a great catch just before that as well. An undercut, and the disc went slightly to the right-hand side. Had to change direction and adjust. Put the hand out to make the catch. And Israel able to then, pass it around the pressure from the Russian defenders. You see they've gone to one-to-one now, I think, realizing that Israel are too comfortable working it around the zone they're putting on. Yeah, neither side bringing a particularly large roster in terms of numbers here this week, but Israel maybe favouring their athleticism here to bring some of these discs in. It is a big bid from Zubets, comes agonisingly close, just couldn't quite bring it in though. It was pretty agonising the way he landed as well. Yeah, he's now laying in front of us on the sideline, desperately trying to catch his breath back. I think he's certainly earned a break. The sun is really beating down here in the Olympic Stadium, Wroclaw, Poland. We're desperately trying to get a little bit of shade and shelter from the sun a little bit, and we're not even playing. If I'd known it'd be this hot, I wouldn't have put the long sleeve on. I would have brought an umbrella. Oh, yeah. Cheeky little parasol. Go down a treat right now. Instead, we're retreating into the shade tents as the pull rolls a little bit after the landing. Adelin swings to Komarov. Komarov looks downfield. There's not a huge amount of separation. Coming underneath towards the break side is Dubinin, but there's going to be a stoppage here. Maybe a foul on the throw, perhaps, saying that he was pushing through. But in the end, travel called. And going to take an injury as well, that player on the force, the number 15 shirt, Noam Aronson. It looks like he's got a hit to the mouth.
Kedem comes on as a replacement. This is going to stay in the hands of Dubinin here for Russia. Perils will put the mark on the resumption of play. The disc is checked back in, violation. Resnick just a little bit eager to get going on that occasion. So quickly resolved. Dubinin wants the dish off, and he does find Adelin. Adelin with a little inside-out backhand, finding that channel through to Barnyakov. Dubinin. Back to Komarov. There's a swing available, but he doesn't like that option. Instead, the player comes underneath from very deep. The 25, Barnyakov, with one of those signature deep throws. Chechik didn't get a hand on it, but the throw didn't have enough on it to go to the receiver either, and Israel now will have the disc with a chance to bring us into half-time. Yeah, I think they've got to be more multi-dimensional than that. They were
two Israeli defenders back there already. You saw the space that he had to aim for was very, very small and very far away. Small and far away. But Israel were ready for it.
Yeah, Bonyakov loves those deep shots when he gets the disc underneath, and maybe they just need to find a better way of drawing those up.
Perhaps getting frustrated after just passing the disc around a little bit, feeling almost like there's a shot clock.
So Israel go underneath, nice break, goes in towards the middle of the pitch. Kedem, see him beckoning his cutters to come towards him downfield. Doesn't like the up line cut, and when the force cheats over a little bit to try and stop that up line go, he takes the swing around. Continuation goes to Cechik now. Back in the hands of Kedem. Underneath Perils. Nice little dish. Again, there's a lot of this game, it felt like Israel have been very calm in possession. Osri. Israel just going back behind their own halfway line now. Cechik gets it, immediately dishes off, sees the player coming through. Behind is free and pops it off, and now Perils does the same. Happy to work every other through Kedem at the moment, the Israelis. The up line cut goes to Lange. Lange looks at the up line, milked full fat goal top into the end zone by Uri Kedem. That's going to take us into half. Israel looking very good. It was tight early on, but they've really accelerated away for an 8-4 lead.
They are good at the small ball. Their positioning seems to be giving four players around the disc plenty of options for to hit each other, to work off each other, and then only if the other players are able to kind of get free under for big yard gainer, 20, 30 yards, then they take that pass. But without even taking those passes very much, they're able to just use those 3 or 4 players at the back to calmly work the disc up, and leaves Russia scratching their heads.
That dominator style, handler-led small ball offense really paying dividends for Israel. We were tied up at 4s at one point, and now they've really put on the Jets to go to an 8-4 half-time lead while the players retreat to the shade, get a little bit of water on. We're going to do the same here in Wroclaw. I suggest you do the same at home as well, but don't go anywhere because we will see you for the second half very shortly. Baby boomer. Yeah, everyone's playing hydrated. Really hydrated. Wouldn't we know for doing that extra game? Obviously, it's just the cable, but if someone comes off the bus or whatever and crashes,
they're going, if they're going on, we can't do it. I just mean like if we're not here and they still want to do it, I think like. I mean, you're on colour, so it doesn't matter so much. If you were doing play-by-play, you're a bit. But also, the problem with on colour doesn't matter. Especially if your type of colour and is a proper angle. Is it a 60 degree? Isn't it funny how when Mike has to operate the scoreboard and all of a sudden he gets it wrong?
That one that was like, I'd put it on and then
They talked about it.
talked about it and I took it off. And then I'm pretty sure I put it back on again, but I pushed the button on the red code off. I didn't see it.
1 minute!
Welcome back to Wroclaw, Poland. The sun is beating down here in the Olympic Stadium. The European Youth Ultimate Championships 2019 here in Poland. Benjamin Rees alongside Felix Shardlow bringing you coverage of this men's lower pool matchup between Israel and Russia. It was a tight first quarter of this game, knotted up at 4 apiece, but Israel really put on the jets to open up a big lead, 8-4 up going into this second half and receiving to begin the second period as well. This is a good position to be in, I'd say, Felix.
I agree, Renji. So I was just posting this photo of us to my Instagram, at Flexo37, if you'd like to follow.
Yeah, you can find me there at Benji Rees, and I'm also at Benjamin Rees on Instagram. And you are, I believe, at Felix Ultimate.
On Twitter, yes.
Yep, that's what I meant, Twitter. And it's always lovely to hear from you. If you are watching this game, maybe you're in Russia, you're in Israel, elsewhere in the continent or worldwide, please do get in touch. It's always lovely to hear from where you're watching in and enjoying the coverage. As Weinstock, with a disc for Israel, finds an option coming towards this near sideline. Safoni dishes it back. Kedem now to Weinstock.
It's like a forced middle from Russia.
Just very calm and collected once more. This has been the characteristic, I guess, of this Israeli offense. They're more than happy just to take the easy options around the back when necessary. For Tacha dishes it back to Kedem. Goes towards the near sideline. Just looking so cool and so easy. Nice little handler movement there. Kedem finds Weinstock. Russians really struggling to keep the forces here. Getting broken seemingly at will by Israel.
They're stepping off to allow it a bit more. But to deny the downfield cuts.
Gets Chechik looking at the end zone, and there's a player wide open. Just a simple blown coverage. Fateh, I can't quite believe he was so wide open. The Russian defenders can't either, and a beautiful start to this second half for Israel, up 9-4.
The force got trapped on the wrong side there. The momentum of the thrower stopped very quickly, and Russian defender just ended up being on the wrong side, and he couldn't really jump over pivot leg without risking being, stepping over the backhand and causing some kind of contact. So he ended up just kind of trapped, and Chechik was able to throw straight onto that right side. You can see he actually blocked him by stepping across to that backhand. Unintentionally probably, but even if it's intentional, it would be a very good move. The Russians in that point clearly sagging off the handlers for Israel. Looked like force middle for a while, but then when they moved over to the far sideline, it looked like it was slightly forcing towards that line.
I think the idea probably just to try and say, we'll let you have these swings, but you're not going to be able to make aggressive downfield passes. We're going to test your patience. But that hasn't really worked because the Israelis have looked very calm and very cool and very collected.
Yeah, they had to complete 25 passes odd to score that point. So it could be seen as not bad from the Russians. They could be like, well, okay, we can force them to have to take a lot of passes, but where do those errors start creeping in? Because Israel seem pretty tight.
It feels like so much of the games at the junior level are decided by just which team has the better level of consistency. Resnick now catches the disc on that swing, looks for a pass that pops up, trying to get underneath it. Good positioning, and it's going to be a foul call. Maybe saying there's too much contact on the reception from Zubets, who has been their favoured deep target. He's got 3 of Russia's 4 goals here. Him and Perlis were both going for that space. I think maybe saying that there was a little bit of jostling, but retracting the call.
Their arms got a little tangled, but I don't think it was anyone's fault.
Yeah, Zubets has the position, and in the end, Perlis gives it up. And the disc will stay in the possession of Zubets. He looks for an option. Eventually on a reset, force gets right the way around, just about gets it off. Working in the backfield now, Russia.
Smooth switch there from the Israel handler marks.
What a raking inside flick. Delicious all the way across the field into the hands of Alexei Alexeyev for Russia. Nice first O point for them on the second half. 2 clean holds to begin the second period of this game. 9-5. What an inside throw, Felix.
Yeah, I was noting the defender that came flying across the front of the end zone. Got horizontal shoulder height. Almost, maybe even touched the disc, but it wasn't enough to stop it. Maybe shoulder height was a bit of an exaggeration, but definitely a good bid from the defender.
And so often, even if you don't necessarily get the touches on those, just the fact that you're throwing yourself around, you're getting yourself in the peripheral vision, and sometimes straight in the direct eye line of a player, and sometimes that could be enough to just divert your gaze for a split second and prevent the disc from going to hand. But good focus and concentration there from Russia. A clean hold to begin the second half for them, but they're going to need to get a few breaks to bring their way back in this game, currently down at 5-9. Israel will receive the disc here.
There are many benefits to laying out when you have a bid and it's not going to be dangerous, and you can get fairly close, but you don't think you can get it. One is it can simply put the catcher off. 2, actually, as your body passes behind the disc, it changes the background that the catcher sees to the disc, which means that it's difficult for them to track it. And 3, it encourages your team to do the same. Lead by example.
Obviously, as you mentioned, you've got to make sure that you're doing it in a way where you're not going to create any unnecessary contact with people, and also in the end zone where, you know, if you don't get it, then it will either be a score or incomplete. But if you do it downfield, then you risk getting yourself out of position on the forces. Israel put a floaty one up deep, didn't catch his D, and there was nearly a second effort, but spotted it away once more. Now coming underneath towards the disc is Spiridov. Goes towards the far sideline. Great catch, not quite inbounds. Fataha doesn't like what he sees, takes the reset, back to Kedem. Weinstock set up as the reset. Lefty backhand goes into the middle. Little lead throw for the front of the end zone. Resnick bids, but he can't get there. Itai Chechik with the catch. Not the clean hold we've seen the other 2 points this half, but Israel get the disc back pretty quickly and punch it in for 10-5.
Looked like there was some miscommunication between the Russians and the Russians in the backfield there, giving Israel another chance to get a layout block, punch it in for commanding 5-point lead now. The Russians started to play more of their vertical stack offense straight out of this half. And I think it opens up a bit more space for their deep shots. So wouldn't be surprised if we saw them sticking with that for now and just trying to iron out these little miscommunications that are causing the short field turns.
And here's a replay of the goal. Weinstock with a low release gets it under the mark. Resnick bids, but there's nothing he can do to get there. Chechik with a very comfortable catch in the end.
Another shoulder high layout D bid.
Nice to see that both sides are unafraid to throw themselves around. It doesn't matter that this is a lower pool game. You still come to these tournaments to win every game you can, to give maximum effort. It's good to see these teams still really want this, despite the fact they're not perhaps in the position they wanted to be coming into this week. Blading backhand pull, lands, rolls and spins out of the far sideline. We should see what Israel do defensively here. I'd probably like to see them try and trap it off the line. Low inside to Resnick with a big gainer downfield. Resnick now puts a shot up once more, looking for Zubet. Weinstock gets underneath it. Weinstock gets a hand up there. Nice defense there from Weinstock. Him against Zubet has been a spicy matchup. That time Weinstock comes out on top and he brings the disc in, takes the free swing to Langer. Now to Perils. Back to Langer, running that give-go move, getting the disc in front of his defender. And now running a more extended up line cut is Perils. Finds an option wide open in this underneath space. Ben David. Ben David tries to find an option, but he goes behind the 14 shirt of Itai Langer.
Yeah, just not taking the early option that he had there and then getting into trouble later on.
That's why it's important that you always got to take open passes, even if it's open in the stall count. It's not particularly an aggressive pass. It just keeps that going, and Zubets tries to backpedal a little bit so he can attack and come towards the disc, but once more, good defending.
Both of these long throws at this point have bounced out of Zubet's hands. So strategically, it's what Russia should carry on doing.
Weinstock finds Perils with an inside that's a little bit spicy, but is well handled. Just staying very cool, looking to work things around the back until they can eventually find some yard gaining downfield cuts. Osri, again, nothing going on off that, has to work it strictly between the handlers. Looking around, drinking, driving, tries to squirrel his way free. Eventually Weinstock comes, catches it, but couldn't maintain possession of it. Good field position here. Key picks up for Russia.
Israel looking a bit worn down.
Key dishes off to Resnick. Faking around, trying to move that mark, looking for a blade towards the back corner. Who else but Zubets catching the goal. Russia still 4 behind, but they need to get these holds if they are to get any breaks to come off them. Zubets with the goal for 10-6.
Yeah, it's good that Zubets ended up with that in his hands. With those other two bouncing out earlier on in the point, if he hadn't have finished that one, then he may have lost some confidence in himself. However, catching that one make all the difference, being like, right, yes, I can score, just got to keep my hands on it. He's getting the better of the defenders. They're putting in really good bids, making it very, very hard for him. But he knows that those discs are hitting him in the hands.
It's generally been a pretty reliable deep target, even if it didn't work a couple of times. But again, eventually, you've got to repay their you've got to make sure that show them you've still got that confidence in them going back to that well. Zubets cuts it towards that far side cone, gets the disc and the goal for Russia. So 10-6 behind. Israel coming back out offensively here. You see Sweden arriving in the stadium, getting ready for their next match here. Going to be taking place in the under-20 men's division, that against France. Lorcan Murray with Rahel Toshnerova will be bringing you coverage of that game.
Toshnerova.
You'll get there eventually. Fielding the pull after the slide is Israel. Nice little spacing, finding that soft spot behind the front line of the defense. Fataha swings into the middle. Defender closed in, couldn't quite get there quickly enough though. Looking around, finds the space on the far sideline, runs the give-go move, gets the disc back in his hands. And just a miscommunication. Thought Fataha was staying, but he went upfield instead.
Yeah, again, Russia switching their defense up quite significantly.
Aidlin has been the powerhouse behind the Russian D-line offense. Throw is going to bounce off the hands of the receiver. In the end, the only player with a potential for second effort snag was one of the 3 Israelis who were around it. No one from Russia was there to back it up. Chechik finds an option in the backfield. Safoni, sorry, Kedem. Now they're swinging it around the back. Fataha finds Kedem into Chechik. Israel working the disc very nicely now.
Russia trying to take out both the handler movement and also the deep looks, which of course is going to leave some space in the middle.
The question is, can you fit the disc into that little envelope that is provided by the defense? Weinstock goes back into the center. No continuation off the swing, so redirecting the throw of traffic back towards this near sideline. Weinstock with a dish back to Chechik, into the center. Kedem. Now he finds Safoni, back to Kedem, right at the front of the end zone, into Kempfer for the goal. What I liked about that Israel offense, they're just moving the disc around the back so quickly, so calmly, and just finding the open pass. In the end, the scoring pass obviously was a scoring pass, but it wasn't a scoring pass, if you know what I mean. It was just, this is the player who's open, and the player who's open happens to be open in the front of the end zone.
Yeah, the most important pass in that point was the one that went through the defenders to the middle of the field. It was only about 12 yards or so, but it went past enough defenders that player catching it was unmarked and was able to then go a couple of passes and then pass into the end zone.
It's that whole idea of when you're downfield, you always want to be marked in a zone by 2 people or no people.
Yeah, if you're being marked by 1, then try and get someone else on you as well. Or try and lose him.
Yeah, obviously being marked by no one is great because you're free, and that's obviously always good, but being marked by 2 people means that you drawing that double team must mean that there's a space elsewhere in the zone that someone else should be able to exploit.
The thing I really like about Israel's technique, and I think that really helped with their throw between the defenders in that point, is that when they just have the disc in their hands, they're ready to throw backhands. They're not holding the disc out wide, they're not faking and pivoting unnecessarily, they're just ready to throw at a moment's notice. So as soon as that option opens up, as soon as the gap opens up, they just snap their wrist and the disc goes.
You're practicing those quick releases and those no pivot throws, so you don't have to make a full motion. You can just get the disc out of your hands quickly and accurately.
And quite often, faking and pivoting is drummed into beginners. But I think as the sport progresses and the strategy evolves, we're going to see that change significantly.
Faking and pivoting obviously does have its uses, but you need to know exactly what those are and how to utilize them, as the throw for Resnick can't be saved despite a valiant layout attempt. Uri Kedem will pick up for Israel. See that he wants an undercut to come nice and early, and it does. High release lefty finds Shaked Sasporta. Again, the lefty looking to find some success on that inside backhand channel. Fakes the high release, and in the end, Kedem goes back towards the far sideline. Now he has it once more in his hands. Every lefty handler I know loves that inside out low backhand. Zebets tries to claw his way forward on the mark.
Keeping the disc low by their waist, ready to throw, but throw straight to the Russian defenders, unfortunately. A bit of a poach there.
Yeah, just got tunnel vision, locked completely onto the receiver, didn't see the field as a whole, and this deep shot is going to be too deep in the end for Resnick. What a cannon of an arm, but even though when actually we can just take a little bit of gunpowder out of the sights on that one.
Russia favouring the deep shots. Potentially in that situation, they could have been a little bit more patient. However, if the throw was shorter, it would have been quite an easy goal.
You need to trust whether you be honest with yourself. Do I think that I'm currently executing at a level where I can squeeze that throw into the back of the end zone?
And are the opponents prepared for that? What do they not want to face up against? Do they not want the one pass sky or get scored on, or do they not want to have to play defense for a minute chasing after people running around with the disc?
Definitely try and weigh up the options. What do we want to do based on what do they not want us to do? Tries a little bit low, but getting there comfortably. Peretz just sneaks it past the bidding defender of Key. Springs up onto the balls of his feet very quickly, which is good to see. Gets the force on. Can't hold it though as it's broken around to Sasporta. Now Sasporta tries to go up line. Not particularly free though, and still count rising, and
foul on the mark, looks like. Russia playing just tight one-to-one defense again. And I noticed a few points ago that it looked like Israel was slowing. So perhaps all the energy they put into the small ball movement, making it look so smooth earlier, perhaps that has taken a bit of a toll on them in the late stage of this game.
Just over 70 minutes played. Games plays first to 15, or the time cap comes on at 100 minutes. So we'll see what happens as the conclusion of this game. Players out here from the European Youth Ultimate Championships on fanseat.com.
This discussion continues for a while, probably because the stall count was rather high. And every player on Israel seems to be marked tightly. So if there's a limited amount of time, then this could be tricky for Israel to get out of.
Just about, I guess, the disc off before the stall out comes. Kedem weasels his way free, finds underneath to Ben David. David now finds Hunter. Hunter's going to zing a blade all the way over to the far side of the field. Visionary put there into space for Itai Peretz. The defender was not expecting that to come, but Peretz was wise to it. Stooped down a little bit to make sure he was making the catch, gets mobbed by his teammates. Israel with a break, just really snuffing out the Russian life here for 12-6.
I'm getting a strong feeling of deja vu here. Have we seen Israel in a previous game on this field make a similar throw? I believe it's in the highlight reel even, one of the previous days. But this cross-field flick is very, very difficult to stop because the defender, as their cutter goes deep, the defender is covering the open side. If the disc comes blading over your head, really you don't have any position to get D on it.
So we're seeing the deep turnover from the Russians. There was separation for Resnick, but just couldn't execute it. Overshot him out of the back of his end zone. You see Resnick look frustrated. Here Peretz just snuck the disc past the bidding Key. Sorry, just a fraction of a second too late. And Hunter looks downfield, sees the cut he likes developing, and Hunter hasn't really shown that propensity for puts so far this game, but that one was executed to perfection. Clearly Peretz is pumped, get a little bit of mobbing from his teammates, a hip spike as well, and Israel now doubling up the Russians at 12-6, just a couple of points away from the end of this game.
I think he came to the tent to have a look at the screens, maybe hoping to catch a replay. Instead, saw a top-down view of himself.
Through the looking glass a little bit there. So the ball fielded on the hop by the Russians, and actually choosing to slap it to the turf and let Komarov pick it up. Cut goes under to the break side, continues instead to the open. Number 11, Alexander Yambulatov finds an option on the far side, and the option goes to ground, but it's a nice catch by Dubinin. Beautiful inside backhand, gets it off, fakes the flick, winds up a monster backhand. Defender bids, doesn't get there, unorthodox, but unorthodox seems to be working pretty well this game for the Russians.
What a throw. That is so difficult to execute. They had not having to blade the throw, which makes it harder to catch, keeping it flat, but getting the speed on it with the right distance and the correct height so that defenders, no matter the best bid that they put in, can't quite get to the disc. Great composure by the receiver there to actually not get distracted by the bid and to make sure of the catch. He throws that completely, I wouldn't say off balance, but he sold his force with the flick fake, able to then throw the backhand before putting in a proper pivot, and it's so accurate.
It's all about one of those, almost those quick ready style throws where you just have a little shimmy and then you go almost with that throw and go style, so you've still got that non-pivot foot in the air, but using that window that, as you mentioned, created the separation, did Komarov with that flick fake, so that inside out backhand channel was free, and he lashed it towards this near sideline. Yura Dubanin, the gleeful recipient. Nice hold that for Russia, a clean possession. Still behind, they're going to need to start getting the break train rolling if they are to come back at 12-7 down.
Yeah, but I like what they've been doing. I think it won't take a huge amount for Russia to... They'll probably come down with their one-to-one defense, and it won't take a huge amount, maybe just like a couple of miscommunications on the Israel side because of the increased pressure, and then they get their heads down at all. Before you know it, there's 3 points going behind, and within then holding an offense, then it could easily become a close game, like 12-11, 12-12.
So first pass gains a few yards, finds Uri Kedem, Weinstock, then to Cechik. Now Sasporta has the disc in his hands, tries to find Weinstock going up line, steady, shifts his weight, comes back into the backfield. Very good at collecting those dishes off through the handlers, and they're seeing the cuts develop downfield as they're catching the disc, and it means it's very good for quick disc movement. Often those easiest passes are the ones right back to the player who's previously threw them, especially if they're utilising those throw and go mechanics well, Felix.
Those are the best passes, straight back to the person that threw to you, because that person is likely to be able to get free as they release the disc. They use the correct techniques for throw and go moves, as Israel players are doing, then you can see it's incredibly difficult to stop.
Weinstock. Not really liking anything he's seeing downfield, so turns and isolates that reset nice and early as well. Gives him time to get himself free. Faking a high release, swings instead to Weinstock. Maybe thinking about the continuation, doesn't like it. Instead shifts, trying to get the disc towards that far side again. Back to Weinstock, looking for an underneath cut. And comes out of his hand, completely wrong. It's most unusual.
Yeah, just a misthrow. I could see what was going through his head there. He's definitely looking to penetrate through throw and go moves.
And Adlin from a standing start, launching a big forehand deep. A couple of players come underneath it. Zubets looks like he hits the ground a little bit hard.
There's an injury symbol on the way down. Don't know whether it's a foul.
Zubets will be replaced by Filip Bernyakov. See it on the replay. Has to go up early with a couple of Israeli defenders there, and I'm not entirely sure where the contact came on the back, maybe, perhaps. Just gets him in a slightly awkward position, possibly. There's going to be no call, though, so the turnover will stand. Israel going to get a second bite of the cherry here on this O point. Weinstock is going to stride from deep towards the disc.
It's difficult when a receiver is that deep to get the disc out in a way where they can run onto it. As you saw in that situation, ended up being a standing shoulder-to-shoulder jump ball situation. So it makes it much harder for the receiver if there's not some kind of angle and some kind of way they can run into space to catch the disc. And when you start from that far away, then that's going to be very, very difficult. You need an incredibly powerful thrower to get the disc right to the corner.
So Fatah finds option underneath, and again, loving those quick dishes off between the handlers. Now a nice gain into Sasporta. Just behind the halfway line, Weinstock working just towards the far sideline. Fatah.
You see, as soon as the defender comes in and commits to stop that short pass, they're able to punish it.
It's just very smart movement there from Israel, knowing that by constantly utilising their short passes, eventually the Russians are going to bite on one of those, and that's going to up space in behind. Continuation, flowing the disc towards this near sideline, and then changing the direction of the traffic, and the Russians left a little bit unguarded by it. Just quick utilisation to the break side. The throw goes from Safoni to Weinstock, and Israel 2 points away from the win here at 13-7.
Yeah, one player do the throw and go move and a strike across towards the near sideline, and that caused a switch from the Russian defenders. However, it wasn't an immediate punish from that throw and go. It's actually almost like a misdirection, because then the next 2 or 3 passes were just going diagonally to the other sideline.
That's, I think Israel have done really, really well. They'll get the disc going towards one sideline, and as soon as they realise there's no continuation there, they're aggressive in getting the disc back the way it came, so they're forcing the defenders to constantly orbit their markers downfield.
The close proximity of the players means that they're able to immediately take those options as well.
So a very disciplined performance, has to be said, this game from Israel, playing just nice, smart, patient offense, and defensively as well, knowing their assignments. They've made a couple of big bids, and I like the way they've tried to avoid contact on those as well.
Yep, they're looking formidable. They're looking formidable. I like their athleticism. Big fan of their technique and the speed at which they move the disc around.
The pull goes up from Tal Osri. Rolls, fielded, smogged down to the ground. And then I thought maybe there was someone behind him, but there isn't, and gets the disc now moving. Yambulatov. And Komarov. Working the disc in the backfield. Low, somehow keeping it alive though is key. Doing a very good job of getting his hand underneath that. Resnick pops up to make that catch. Russia playing with fire a little bit on this possession. We'll see if they eventually get burned, and they do. Tries to squeeze it past the defender, Daniel Ben David.
It's a shame if he caught that pass, then David would have been lost on his own in the backfield, and Russia would have been able to attack.
That's always what you got to think about on defense when you try and come steaming through. Is that risk-reward factor. Am I going to get there? And if I don't get there, how badly am I going to be potentially punished for it? Osri with a nice yardage gainer down this near sideline. Fakes continuation, but there's no one there. Hunter, he's got his number spray painted onto the back of his head, and there's a player wide open in space. Clearly happy with that one, Ben David.
Yeah, textbook break, 45 degrees, straight across the field, 20 yards to Israel player. Completely, it looked completely unmarked, but there's a lot that can go into making that look easy.
So Israel now just 1 point away from the win. They're doubling up Russia's score at the moment at 14-7, and the Israel under 17 open side there, having a little bit of fun on their own, celebrating. They just look they've got so much more energy, and Russia have had some very nice passages of play, but it feels like when they have got the turns, they've got had a tendency to get a little bit insular, whereas Israel are playing with a lot more expression, and Ben David, they're clearly happy with that bookends. Although I would like to see that spike be a little less edged down. What did that disc ever do to you, poor guy?
Yeah, exactly. You don't hurt your other belongings or toys. So
I mean, you say that, you've not seen the way I treat water bottles. The number of Nalgene's that I've thrown around and broke is just. Honestly, at this point, I should probably just have a subscription.
But that's after something bad happens. When you do something good, and
no,
something good happens.
it's not always after something bad happens.
Oh.
It's just like on the sideline, get some water, I'll just throw it away, and it'll be like, oh, whoops. So some sunspots coming through on the camera. You can see the sun beating down. There is a big grey cloud here. It looks a little bit ominous coming overhead, but at the moment, it's providing much welcome cloud cover. It does get pretty hot on these AstroTurf surfaces.
They're just going all the way onto the muddy surface of the dirt racing track that's around. People may be coming out here on motorbikes in a couple of hours.
Yeah, the Olympic Stadium hosts, you see the markings on the pitch, hosts some gridiron football and some speedway action, so multi-purpose unit. And a big deep shot goes up. Ben David puts pressure on it, and Alexei Alexeyev saying that he couldn't quite get his hand up. It was prevented from doing so by the Israel defender. Engaged in discussion, you see there. It's tough to tell quite from that angle how the contact happened, but
I've got a feeling it's as he tries to bring his arm up. It's just before that, I think. As he tries to bring his arm up early, it's underneath the other players. So tricky one, because I don't think there's anything that the Israeli player did wrong, and That said, though, contact happens and it makes it very hard to make the catch. So it's understandable that the call is there.
And we mentioned this earlier. I always feel that if you're not sure, it's better to talk about it, have the discussion, and then, if need be, you can retract the call if you want to.
It's possible that an arm comes out as well. You can't really tell for sure.
And in those situations where it can be difficult to tell what's gone on, a contest isn't necessarily a bad result. Sometimes it's clear that, okay, we just have different interpretations of how this played out. None of them are necessarily the wrong interpretation, but we're just seeing it from different perspectives, and we're going to contest it and send it back, and let's forget about that call and move on to the rest of the game. Try to get a reset off. Still count rises, lashing a prayer deep. Hail Mary, plenty of bodies underneath it, and the Russians answer it. Alexeyev does get his goal. Maelstrom of players crowded underneath the disc, but Alexeyev rose highest, brought it down. Russia with a hold, 14-8, but if they are to make a famous comeback, now they've got to get the breaks going.
That's a little taste of Russia doing what Russia does best. Putting a big throw, backing the receiver to bring it down. Although that maybe was more of a high stall count Hail Mary, as you said.
I mean, in terms of high stall count Hail Marys, one that goes right to the end zone and hits a big receiver for a goal. It's a pretty good one, I think it's fair to say. And you can see there it gets up above the two defenders, Osri and Ben David. Nice play there from Alexeyev. And actually, this expansive style of ultimate, it's something that is not uncommon for some of the Russia senior sides.
We saw it EYUC last year, the Russian Great Britain final. Russia very much focused on throwing the disc to the end zone every time they had it in their hands, making sure they had an opportunity to score with each possession. Their D-line offense pretty much could just be summed up by the word yeet. Is get the disc, what are we going to do? Yeah, let's bang it deep to big men and let big men make big plays. And so you can watch that final for free on the WFDF YouTube channel. And they had a good run to the semi-finals, taking home a bronze medal at EYUC, and coverage of those games is available on fanseat.com as well for you to peruse at your leisure, as Israel will pick up the disc in the Russian half with a chance to put this game on ice. Kedem looking downfield, fakes the big, but that's not necessarily been the way Israel have played this game. They've been happy to work the swings and the underneath passes, and they do so now for Taha. Swinging around the back. Tight 1-to-1 marking from the Russians.
But that one just a little bit off target. He looks around at Weinstock. Looks like he can't quite believe that that foul was going to be called. Calls for the translator. Zubets comes in.
It hit the guy's hands. I don't know whether he would have got control. They've come to have a look at the monitors.
It's difficult to tell from quite that angle exactly how much contact there was, where it was, and whether they had control of the disc.
It's coming. Okay, we're just showing the replay, but unfortunately we can't see that clearly from this angle. Just speed and such. See the fake comes, the disc comes across. It's there about the same time. So
you see how Key comes in and really keys in, looks as soon as he turns around, tries to explode out and get his hand there first, but from that angle it's very difficult to tell exactly how it played out.
The Russians and Israelis around the monitor are still disagreeing about whether that looked like a strip or not.
And I think that just tells you how close it was. In the end, they are going to retract the call, so turnover will stand. Russia will get a break opportunity. Just extend this game, prolong it a little bit. There's going to be a pick. It was a nice find using that inside-out backhand channel, but was quite so free due to a little bit of a collision in the stack downfield. Yeah. Alexeyev slapping hands with his counterpart, the number 23, Uri Kedem.
So we've seen Russia's tight defense pay off there. I think that wasn't a strip. It was good defense from tight marking, clamping down on that dump pass as soon as it was in the air.
Again, it's good recognition there from Key. As soon as the handler turned his hips and squared up, he knew that he was looking for that dump, and he really got a move on to try and get his hand there first.
So we'll see now whether they bring out another big throw to the end zone. perhaps that's exactly what Israel are expecting, so perhaps they'll be given a few free unders. Looks like nothing's free here.
Again, tight, smothering downfield defense from Israel, just about sneaking that one, taking advantage of a little bit of a face mark, getting it out into space early. Throw pops up a little bit, but Resnick definitely has position. Chechik knew that he wasn't going to get a big chance at it. Going up line now is Resnick. Big expansive flick all the way across the field. Beautiful throw. Cuts across the middle of the field into the hands of the 24 shirt, Alexander Basov. It is a break for Russia, but they're going to need a few more of those as they are still down in this game 14-9.
Oh, Resnick, what technique. Catching the pass going up the line, immediately pivoting inward and throwing cross-field Japan style.
That is a very good call, Felix. That's a very Japanese style throw, just pivoting around, getting the huck to the opposite third of the field, start towards one sideline and throw it all the way over to the other. It means there's so much break space to aim at. If you can just find a way to get it through all the oncoming traffic in the middle of the field, that time he found a path, cut it through perfectly. Beautiful throw into the path of Basov for the goal.
So quick as well, so quick. He caught that pass up the line. Wasted no time faking down line, as is kind of conventionally taught in a lot of places. A lot of players will catch this going down the line, put a fake in, thinking, oh, this will get all the defenders biting over there. He just skips that step and just immediately turns infield. Within like less than half a second, he'd released that cross-field flick, using the separation that is granted by actually good defense downfield. Downfield, you're expecting the disc to continue down the line, so you take a step, you put your momentum in that direction for the first half second of the stall count, and he just punishes and uses that against you.
I wonder if as that strike cut's going from Resnick, he's seeing where the defenders are spaced downfield, so he knows that actually I do have this shot across the pitch to Basov if I can get it out quickly enough.
Indeed, when he caught the disc, his hips were facing downfield, so he probably had out the corner of his eye an idea of what was ahead of him.
You've got to use your peripherals, Felix.
I introduced a rule at pickup the other day where you weren't allowed to look at the person you were marking, either when you had a force on or when you were marking them downfield. Just had to use your peripherals to be able to see them. Couldn't actually directly look at them at any point. And it encourages a lot of great techniques and just play from people to be able to have their heads up a bit more, see the field as a whole, see where your teammates are, see where all the opponents are, rather than making it just a simple one-to-one battle.
Because defensively as well, it's it's a big temptation to get everyone on our island and to do their job, but that prevents help defense opportunities as well when you're just focused on exactly where your player is. You don't necessarily have the disc in your sights, and those face marking opportunities, especially in the red zone, are usually punished. So Israel with a second chance to put this game to bed. That's a fantastic layout from Itai Chechik.
Russia creating great opportunity again with their tight defense.
They've really stepped up a gear in the late stages of this game, the Russians. Is it a case of too little, too late? Maybe not, as the disc just pops straight out of the hands of Sasporta. Straight up doinks the catch, most unusual. Komarov with a blading backhand down this sideline, but the risk with those shots that stay tight to the line is that the receiver can't really go out and attack it, because obviously they've got to remain in bounds, but the defender's under no such obligations. And Chechik, after already having a big layout save at this point, that time going up strong, attacking the disc, making sure there was no chance of it ever coming back in bounds.
I think there's a little bit of tiredness here with the Israeli team. I think they want to just put this game to bed, and they're suffering from maybe a little bit of fatigue.
Yeah, neither team with a particularly large roster here this week. Russians do have slightly larger numbers, and maybe as the late stages in this game, as that lactic acid, that cramp begins to build up in the legs, especially in this heat, it's beginning to play a factor now as another turnover comes out of the Israel offense that had been pretty much not flawless, but been very impressive for most of this game. Resnick comes underneath. Turning, looking around, showing the scuba, but not going to dive for that one on this occasion. Instead going for a high release backhand with the inside out. What a throw that is from Resnick. He is putting on a clinic out here with some of these more unusual options.
Yeah, Resnick clearly a very talented thrower. I'm wondering, you know, Russia needs to score 6 points in a row to win. I think right now they need some fantastic layout catch on an inside-out scuba or something that's just going to raise them, shut down Israel's hopes.
Or maybe you're going to get what you're asked for. A scorching hammer that comes down at a hot vertical angle is well reeled in on this near sideline. Russia are making a real game of this now. Great catch there by Alexeyev. Still got a lot of work to do, but maybe he's just going to play in the Israeli minds now that a comeback is potentially possible. 14-10 now, the current score.
Yeah, they're into double figures. Anything can happen when you get to this part of the game. One thing that I've seen teams do previously in Israel's situation is they just have the mindset of, come on, we just need, okay, as we see that fantastic layout catch for a save on a very high stall count. So Israel might get the mentality of we just need to put it in one more time. And then the big throwers start just being like, okay, look, I'll put this game to bed. And then they just take the decision they wouldn't be taking if it was at the beginning of the game. And then that can lead to one mistake after another, one turn after another. And before you know it, Russia are right back in it.
A band that I used to listen to a lot in my youth, and actually I still really enjoy. And Shikari had a song called "Anything Can Happen in the Next Half Hour," and the way that this is going, you really feel that anything could happen.
Yeah, I feel like Russia found their stride in defense, and they found something that works against Israel. So imagine they're going to stick with that, and we'll just see whether Israel can adapt to it, or whether they start clutching not at straws, but there's a Star Wars quote of the tighter you close your fist around the galaxy, the more star systems slip through your fingers. And if they try and do that with this game, then they'll just see these points just start slipping away.
I think we've got some pretty niche pop culture. Oh, I mean, yeah, some slightly more niche pop culture references in, which is good to see.
I'm not sure anyone at this tournament would get a Star Wars quote there.
I mean, I was going to think, no, Frisbee players are all generally quite native. They'll probably get Star Wars quotes, but then I realised, oh yes, everyone here is a child.
Yeah, we're talking original 1978.
You're talking about The Phantom Menace, right? The best Star Wars film.
Empire Strikes Back. I know you're joking with the Phantom Menace.
It really ate me inside to make that joke as well. Hey, it gave us that really good pod racing game.
Yeah, I think the less said about that, the better.
I don't know. They could be following the new Star Wars films. I mean, Episode 7 was basically just a remake of Episode 4.
And I enjoyed it.
I very much enjoyed it.
I was very aware that it was just playing to Episode 4 and being like, hey, remember this feeling? It's good, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it's a good feeling.
If there's a formula that works, there's a reason that it works. And I guess Russia have now found the formula to generate the turns on this D-line. So why go away from that? If you're generating the blocks and generating the missed throws, I'd stick with that as the pull just about lands out of that far sideline. Kedem will pick the disc in, take it from the brick mark.
You're going to see Israel. It looks like they're going out of a tight vertical stack, which is very good against one-to-one defense. If Russia don't clam against this, if they don't surround that stack, then the advantage here is definitely Israel's.
I'd like to see a concerted effort to attack that break side, and they're going to do it through a reset. It's going to leave a little bit of space, don't like it, instead working back towards the open side. Looking for a cutter to develop underneath, taking a little dish. In not a lot of room is Uri Kedem. Now resets to Weinstock. Back to Kedem. Those two have been a very assured presence generally for Israel, and Weinstock with an accentuated up line cut throw on the money. Nothing Russia can do. Beautiful pass into the hands of Itai Chechik, and Israel will take this game 15-10.
What a performance from Israel. They showed fantastic athleticism, brilliant technique, and then kept their cool heads at the end to put the game away.
I'd say there were times when they didn't quite have that rhythm, but for the most part of this game, the Israeli offense was as cool as the other side of the pillow. Just beautiful, never really looked particularly fussed, as they were happy to work the unders, as you mentioned, utilize those handler movements, those strikes, those give-goes, and Russia put a little bit of fight back later on. Some visionary throws from Ivan Resnik brought things a little bit closer, but in the end, Israel just had too much for them.
You see, even in that last point, they're very nearly a D from Russia. As one of the Russian defenders marking Israel kind of under move, saw that the cut was going up the line, lingered for a second to be like, maybe I can get this. And then realized, actually, no, he's got it. I won't be able to get it without contact. And you can see there, as he tries to chase then, the yards have gone. He's been punished for it immediately. But it was not a bad gamble to have a little look at that one. It almost paid off.
It's the risk reward. At that time, there was the reward was very great. You get the turnover, you continue this game, but it was extremely high risk because it left the throw wide open. It's a beautiful put from Weinstock into the hands of Chechik for the 15-10 Israeli win. Thank you very much for watching action from the European Youth Ultimate Championships, the Under-20 Open Division. Israel take down Russia 15-10 for all our Ulti.tv crew. Here on this coverage from Fanseat.com, I have been Benjamin Rees for Felix Charlot. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned because we have more Under-20 Open action coming up with Lorcan and Rachel bringing you coverage of France versus Sweden. But in the meantime, we'll see you on the other side.